It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey Not the Face with your host John Nash and your producer me, Steffi Haynes. And today we are going to talk about updates to the UFC antitrust cases. We're going to talk about TKO's financials that came out detailing the 2025 salaries of their highest ranking officials. We are going to talk about WWE and Wrestlemania 42. We're going to talk about Aljamain Sterling and his big promotional push of his Funk Harbor rum. But before we get into all of those things, I would highly advise new listeners to pick up a paid subscription because about half of our show is behind a paywall because, you know, we got to keep the lights on around here. So, John, how the heck are you?
Fairly good. Well, I worked from home today. It was a long, arduous day of heavy work in the coal mines of editing. But other than that, pretty good.
The coal mines of editing and cat tending.
Yeah. She's on my lap right now for listeners. She walked on, had to. So hopefully she sits here quietly during the show and doesn't. Oh, she's already getting moving. Oh, fuck, we're screwed.
That is our unofficial show mascot, Miss Isla the cat.
Yeah, she's kind of she's technically, I think she might be the executive producer at this point.
Yes, I would say so. She's got the executive producer credit for sure.
Yes.
Now, before we get into our show, let's chat for a minute about what happened Saturday night, because Dana White just might be a psychopath.
I saw that. I saw people saying that, and I've seen a lot of comments outside, but actually I've been looking for comments from outside the bubble, outside the MMA sphere, to get a better sense, because when the event happened, I saw a lot of news about it, but I actually didn't see much about Dana White present because I wasn't on X, so I wasn't, I have a lot of my X interactions are for a lot of people in combat sports. So I'm sure they were talking about it a lot, but the regular news was not. And then I checked in and I saw that Dana White was there. So I started checking out, different people, and there were some obvious partisan Republicans that thought he was badass what he did. But the general comments were they just thought it was kind of weird. His one that he made this boast about, he refused to get on the ground, and there was a guy that has a social media account. He's a veteran of the Afghan and Iraq War, actually served in the an infantry unit during them. And so he had to comment, and his thing was like, that is the fakest tough man comment he's ever heard. Because if you've ever been into gunfire, and I gotta acknowledge, I have been in situations. I was at famously at the silent movie theater when the guy killed the projectionist and shot through the audience. Being in gunfire, you should hit the ground, standing up, sitting there like you're going to be tough it just doesn't work when a bullet comes after you. There's no, no one's muscles bounce. Bullets don't bounce off your muscles. So I saw comments like that and other ones about his post comments, how he took it all in, and it was awesome. And I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe it was misquoted, but then I saw the little video clip, and that's when I saw people in combat sports commenting about it, and he does come across a little unhinged. So I'm guessing, this is my kind of guess. And again, this is, how do I know? I don't know Dana White. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know this stuff for sure. But my kind of guess is he has played the character of Dana White so long that he can't turn it off during events.
Well, I saw lots of people on Blue Sky commenting on it. And the first comment that I saw from mainstream was noting how he left his wife at the table. When they ushered him, he didn't turn around and grab his wife or whoever that woman was with him. I wasn't sure if it was his wife, but a lot of people seemed to think that it was.
I don't think you'd go to that event without your wife because it's going to be public.
Exactly. But her hair has changed. So that's why.
I will interrupt you. I will say that two things were entertaining. One was RFK getting escorted off the stage, and they left his wife behind.
Yeah, and he
Cheryl
didn't turn
Hines.
around either.
And she was just like left to run after him. But I got to give credit to perhaps the evilest man in the administration, Stephen Miller, that he grabbed his wife and
on her
escorted
boob.
her out. Yeah. Well, you got to, might be your last chance to get a quick fix in. So you got to give him credit for that too. You can't deny the man.
Yeah, but Dana didn't even turn around and look. He just, let the guy escort him very rapidly. And then somebody else went and grabbed the woman, but he didn't look back. He didn't grab her hand, nothing. Now I saw different angles and video clips and things of lots of people grabbing for their wives and things like that, but not Dana White and not Robert F. Kennedy Jr. His comments to me seem moronic. He seems like a high-functioning idiot to me. Seriously, I can't help myself. He says the dumbest things at the most inappropriate times, like... And I can't help but reference back to what you just said, like he can't turn it off. And that's a very apt description of Dana White. He can't turn it off. And he comes across as a moron a lot because of it. I mean, that to me was the dumbest thing you could say in that situation. And if you're trying to sell it, it's really hard to sell it when you've got Dana grinning from ear to fucking ear, talking about how it was fucking awesome. I'm sorry. All of the conversation surrounding this whole event being a setup kind of rings true to me.
Yeah, well, I don't buy it's a setup at all, just because the suspect they caught seems so clearly someone with schizophrenia. And caught in the process. But I'm gonna give Dan White a benefit of it up for 1 second. When he said it was awesome, I was thinking about that. When he said it's awesome, was that question specifically about the event up to the shooting, or did he include the event happened after the shooting? That it was awesome?
You gotta watch the clip. They asked him specifically about what was going through his head. When this whole shooting incident was happening, and that's what he said. It was fucking awesome, that the adrenaline and this and that. And I mean, he just said the dumbest things.
Okay, he is kind of functionally an idiot then, because it would make some sense if he was referring to the event up to that moment.
Nope.
Like I was having a great time. It was awesome.
He was not. He was referring directly to what happened. And that's why I think he's a moron. And for all those people out there that replied to me on my post that said, "Oh, that moron just built the entire UFC into a multi-billion-dollar company," Dana White did not build that company. Oh my God, the Dana White myth, y'all have fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. Dana White did not build the UFC, the Fertittas did.
I mean, the evidence that when people try to still argue that he is this major this genius, that promotional genius, and that's what the UFC is so valuable. And okay, let's give him some. Maybe in the past he was, but if you listen to his testimony and what his function in the company is now, he is not the guy making a lot of the big decisions, right? And so when people try to credit him for all the success of the UFC, well, he does not seem incredibly hands-on to a lot of it. He seems very preoccupied with the walkout music and things like that.
Yeah.
And all of his 100 other businesses that he's working on right now. So.
And even in the past, when the Fertittas were running the show, the Fertittas were making all the decisions. It was Lorenzo Fertitta who inked the deal on a fucking napkin for Tough. It wasn't Dana White's idea or anything like that. It was Lorenzo Fertitta that made that deal. There's so much that the Fertittas did that Dana gets a lot of credit for.
Well, I go back to everything. I think there's so much also some of the key fighters did along the ways that were been ignored as well. But we've talked about this in the past on past episodes about Dana White, that he is not the guy that you should credit with all the genius business moves. His function in the UFC, and this I'll give him some credit. he is the id of the fan, and he's the guy that lays out the entire aesthetic. So when you're bored with the UFC aesthetics, the way they look, the presentation, that's Dana White, but a large number of fans seem to love it. So it's Dana White's taste is what the UFC is built around. And I think that's his key contribution to the UFC.
Yeah. And false bravado.
Yeah, when they also, I mean, let's give him credit. This is genius. I don't know if it's 100% him, is they built this character, because I think he does play kind of a character that is serves as almost the living logo mascot of the promotion. So he gets all the attention, and he's the id of the fan base.
Yep, indeed. So anyways, we must move on because there's not a lot of business to wrap around Dana's moronic statements after a shooting. We have some updates to the UFC antitrust cases? Yes or no?
Yes, we do. There was a filing, so we got something. So the filing there was a filing in the Johnson v. Zuffa case, which is the antitrust case. If you're a new listener, we seem to pick up new people all the time. So if you're a new listener, not quite familiar with the case, I'm sure you are familiar with the Lee v. Zuffa, the original antitrust class action that was settled for $375 million. This is the case that picks up where that left off. It's almost identical. And so this case involves the plaintiffs. It's a specific filing by the plaintiffs in reply in support of their motion for attorney's fees against the non-party, which is Dominance MMA. That's Ali Abdelaziz's company. And so if you remember a week ago or so, we talked about how Dominance rebutted the attorney fees that they were charging. And as we mentioned, we should be attorneys because some of those hourly fees, Joseph Silveira, man alive, you are making some good money. But the core dispute is Dominance MMA, which is a fighter management company, which I'm sure everybody here knows about. They were asked for just documents relevant to the case to hand them over for use as discovery for the plaintiffs, and they've repeatedly failed to comply with multiple court orders requiring production. And so the court had ordered Dominance to produce roughly 120,000 documents collected by their vendor Holo by April 3rd, 2026. So Dominance produced a whopping 2,911 documents, as they note in this, roughly 2% of what was required, making it their third violation of the court order. By the time of the reply filing, total production had reached only 1,996 documents from Abdelaziz's email account. So Dominance also did what they conducted an unauthorized linear relevance review of documents, which the court had explicitly prohibited, instructing them simply to turn everything over subject only to privilege review. So here's the fee dispute. The plaintiffs seek attorney fees for 286.1 hours of work over 7 months spent chasing Dominance's compliance. Dominance argued the fees were excessive and tried to claim plaintiffs owed them money by mischaracterizing plaintiffs' offer to advance $10,000 towards production costs as an acknowledgement of full financial responsibility. The plaintiffs flatly rejected that characterization. And so in the exhibits are the correspondence between the two sides, Dominance's April 3rd and April 16th production letters, and the plaintiffs, their letter is sharply worded, the plaintiff's April 8th response calling out Dominance's non-compliance and demanding they immediately cease the unauthorized review and complete production. So hopefully on the next status hearing, we might have some decisions on this. I thought the judge might say something on the last one. He didn't. But we are waiting for Judge Boulware's input on what's going on with the Dominance, the third party events, or I should say the third party, or the non-party, I should say, Dominance MMA.
Quick question. If you were in Judge Boulware's shoes, what would you think looking at all that?
Well, I mean, it's obvious they're not complying, right? That's 100%. Now, the fees, I think they might have a point. The fees seem a little excessive by the plaintiffs, partly because Joseph Silveira gets paid a ton. So if I had to guess, now I have no clue what's going to happen, but if I had to guess, I think the judge might order them to pay, let's say, half the fees, and then tell them to turn over the documents. But does that mean Dominance is going to turn over the documents or not? That's still the open question. And what can he do to compel them to actually turn it over? What's to stop them from turning over some documents, saying that's all we have, and the judge just kind of giving up because it's not a fight worth having?
Wow, that sucks.
Yeah, it does. There's a limit to the power sometimes. But of course, the other thing is the judge could just say, I am going to, force you to pay. You can try to appeal or whatever, but I'm going to say you have to pay the full amount and turn over the documents. And they fail. The plaintiffs could maybe accrue more billable hours, and then he could order them to pay it again. But
what if they just keep not complying?
Well, then the billing could just keep going.
But what would happen if they just don't?
They don't. Well, I mean, at some point, I'm going to guess they're going to comply, even if it's a half-assed gesture.
Can somebody file a lien against them? Because that's what I'm going for. Is
well,
there
I mean, that's if they don't pay. If they don't pay the attorney's fees, that could happen. The court could order them to pay. Mm-hmm. You're talking more like, could the court order contempt of court and put them in trouble? Yes, but looking through the history of these type of cases, that's not common. I think the number one thing is the judge will allow attorney fees to continue, ongoing attorney fees to collect, and that'll be the way they compel them to some sort of compliance to discovery. But the big question is, how much are they going to comply? That's the big question.
But the plaintiffs couldn't just take that up on their own to file a lien against any businesses, any brick and mortar, any bank accounts that they may have.
Well, they would, but the attorneys wouldn't have really any standing. The reason they're able to get money from Dominance is because Judge Bulward said part of the punishment, if you do not comply, is I might order that you're responsible for the plaintiff's attorney fees.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if he does that and they still don't pay, is that when?
Oh, no. What I'm saying is, they'll have to eventually pay because the court can order them to pay. And yes, could put a lien or,
at that point, the court and not be filed privately by the plaintiff.
Yeah. The Judge Bulward himself will, get involved. They do not pay. But my argument is that they might pay those attorney's fees. But the part they want is the discovery. How much are they going to comply with discovery? Are they just going to keep accruing attorney's fees, or are they going to actually comply?
Gotcha. All right. So let's move on and talk about TKO's financials that came out last week. And they detailed the 2025 salaries of TKO's highest ranking officials. What did they look like? And what was the difference in the year before to now?
Well, first of all, these are some underpaid executives. These guys are really grossly underpaid for what they,
No way.
Yeah, just, I couldn't believe it. The top executives for the year 2025, the top executives they listed here were Ari Emanuel, who's the executive chair and chief executive officer of TKO. Now, remember, he also sits on the board of Endeavor, which is back to William Morris. And then there's Andrew Slimer, who's a chief financial officer. Mark Shapiro, which we know that name well, is the president and chief operating officer. And Seth Krause, who's a chief administrative officer. So that's the big four executives. There's other ones too, including The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, who's on the board. But he wasn't really paid much. He was paid a lot in options in the company last year, stock for, I think, $30 million. And for this year, it was dividends and some compensation for travel and things like that. But so it was all around probably a little over $1 million, $1.5 million. But he failed to show up a lot of the board meetings. So I guess, he couldn't, for that little money that they're giving him, he couldn't show up more often. But for the big executives, we'll do Shapiro and Emanuel, the two big names that we know. Ari Emanuel, if we go back to 2023, he got a salary of $911,000 from the company, but also got a $24 million bonus to do with the merger of WWE and UFC. And then he had stock awards of $40 million. So he got $65 million roughly back in 2023. Now, last year he took a big hit. And I don't know if he was able to cover his bills properly because he had to really tighten the belt. Because last year, even though he had a salary of $3 million, his bonus was only $4.3 million, and his stock awards were $2.5 million in 2024, including all the other non-equity and other compensation. His total was just over $18 million. The family was eating lean that year. They probably were, eating a lot of pasta, a lot of maybe not even having spaghetti sauce with it. You remember those days?
Beans and rice days.
A lot of beans and rice, the cheap hot dogs you get from the Ralphs and stuff. Especially on the one on the stand when they're just about to expire, so you get them dirt cheap. A lot of cost cutting there. And then last year, 2025, the most recent, his salary again, $3 million. He's not a highly paid man. His bonus was $11.9 million. Stock awards, $44 million. Non-equity incentive plan compensation, $8 million, $380,000 other compensation. So last year he had his best year in total based on all that together. He got $67.4 million for the year. So he had a pretty good year. And he blew out Mark Shapiro, who has a higher base salary of $4 million. But last year, Mark Shapiro only ended up with $42.6 million total in compensation. So the executive pay between just those two guys, $100 million. If you had the other top two executives, you had $132 million. You were probably at if you consider that the UFC, they listed that WWE performers get about 15% of the revenue. We're guessing UFC fighters around 15% of the revenue. So we are talking about combined those, are probably $500 million total. So the sum total of the top four executives is close to 25 to 30% of the total pay of their top athletes.
Jesus Christ.
What's that Jesus Christ for? These are hardworking guys. They are obviously putting in hundreds of hours more of work, 100 times the work that the athletes are.
I hate this place. Wow.
It's interesting too, is Brandon Thurston. Hats off to Brandon Thurston for originally, going through this. I got it too, because I get notified when they post their SEC filings, but he went through it. And so I use a lot of his research on this. But in the document, it also lists the medium TKO employee. So it's not the fighters, not the wrestlers, the actual guys that work there that aren't contractors. And in 2025, thanks to the Dodd-Frank Act, we have this. In 2025, the median TKO employee gets $82,428. So Ari Emanuel got 813 times what the medium TKO staffer got.
Wow. That's some serious overarching there.
Yeah, I think the total of the compensation for the board of directors, too, I should know, it was $25 million total for all of them. So not quite as much. Nick Khan, we should list him. I forgot about him, because Nick Khan, his total compensation. Sorry, that's not the total compensation of the board. That's the total compensation of Nick Khan. Nick Khan got $25 million last year.
Jeez.
So, again, incredibly underpaid executive.
Just horrible. Oh gosh, what a transition we're going to make here.
Yes.
There was a report stating that the White House card will have, and I quote, Super Bowl level security, and that it will be handled by federal agencies. Who's going to eat the cost of that?
Well, it's obvious, and I think it was clear in the report that it's going to be paid for by the government. I'm not sure if it comes out of the White House budget or what. It's already been set aside, probably part of the 250, the Project 250 for the anniversary fund. And so I know Ari Emanuel and other executives at TKO made a big deal that they're going to cover all the costs for this event. But, did you expect them to cover did people really think they're going to pick up the cost for the security?
So basically what you're saying is Ari Emanuel said that we're going to cover all the costs, but we're not really going to cover all the costs.
Yeah, they're not covering all the costs. And, I did wish it would have been nice if they just would have mentioned that, because I don't think anybody really expected them to. But to bring up and highlight that you're going to cover all the costs and then not cover all the costs, it is kind of a bad look.
All right, I have a quick question.
Yep.
They're estimating that their costs for this event is going to be around $60 million. Do you think the security is going to exceed $60 million?
No, I don't think it'll exceed 60 million. I mean, there is a chance too that they cover part of the security costs on specific locations involving, their crew, but they're not going to be in charge of the security of the actual White House grounds and stuff. The Secret Service just wouldn't even allow it. But yeah, the 60 million.
No, but they could like contribute the money towards it. I'm just curious if what the taxpayers are going to pay towards that security is going to be more or less than 60 million.
I think it'll be less than 60 million. I don't think it'll cost that. I mean, it'll cost a lot for the security involving that many people on the grounds. I'm sure it'll be a small fortune, but I can't imagine it being more than 60 million. I mean, I don't know what the exact amount was, but based on, when I've looked at of major events, they have breakdowns. I have some breakdowns of some events. Security has never been that high. I imagine it'd be a fraction of that cost for the total security, considering obviously you have, you'd have a large number of Secret Service and police on call, on location, handling security, several hundred probably total when you add it all up. That's a huge fee when you add up all their hours and everything else. But I don't see, even with well-paid federal employees in the Secret Service, I don't see how that would get even close to 60 million.
All right. Now let's talk about Wrestlemania and WWE, because last weekend there was a lot of uproar over WrestleMania 42, and that uproar ranged from ESPN's Andreas Hale being denied credentials all the way to flagging ticket sales. It drew tons of scorn and criticism for the content of the event. Andreas Hale being denied credentials when he works for ESPN, who puts on the event. They host these premium live events, and them not doing anything, saying anything in his defense or anything at all, to me, that spoke volumes. But all of these things combined, does that forebode darker times ahead for WWE?
Well, I don't know what darker times would be, because I think the entire existence of the WWE is a dark time. As an AWA fan, when Vince McMahon showed up at the WWF and put everybody else out of business, we've been in a perpetual dark ages since. And so it's hard for me as a non-actual fan to know what wrestling fans are heading to. But just on the osmosis, because I deal, I'm familiar with pro wrestling. I'm amazed at how much I know about pro wrestling just through osmosis on social media interactions. I think WWE is facing some issues now on denying Hale his credentials, which is just absurd. I agree with Ann Evans, who's used to work with the UFC and media relations. And his whole point was it brings more attention. It's worth, without having him there, we cannot pitch him our side of the story. And so instead it draws more attention. It's actually worse for the company. And I agree with that. And so, but this has been the nature of Zuffa before TKO even existed, has long been their nature, is that they, if you're not on the team, they don't want to deal with you. And ESPN not standing up for them is not surprising, because that's something they've also done with their past partners, where they've sided with when they're in bed with the NFL, when they're in bed with any of the major league sports, NHL, when they used to have them, they would side with the league over, their own coverage. Their coverage would change based on if they're in a relationship with the league or not. So, none of that's surprising, although unfortunate and not productive. And, but regarding the fans and the ticket sales, I think there's a couple things here. One is my understanding, and I could be wrong. You tell me if I'm wrong, is fans have been kind of underwhelmed about the storylines, the direction of the wrestling has gone for the WWE lately. That turns on people, because I have noticed through my interaction with some wrestling fans, I've noticed a lot of fans that go in and out of WWE fandom. They tune in, they find something they like, and then they get bored, in a direction it's going, and then they tune out, especially older people, fans that were fans when they're kids. They'll watch for a while, something will kind of bore them with it, they'll leave, and then they'll be alerted to something else, and they'll come back in as a fan for several years. and then perhaps leave and come. So it's an on again, off again. It's a little different than
you just summed me up in a nutshell.
Yes. That seems to be a lot of fans. So if they're bored, if we're in a downturn of storytelling, that could describe why a large number of fans are turned off. Also, they're pushing ticket prices extremely high. And unlike UFC, which draws mostly, younger or adult men, mostly men, some women, but mostly men, single men, a lot of them, who have less expenses that they're not families that are dependent on their incomes. And many of them too have, are upper income that show up to the shows. That's not UFC fans are not upper income overall. But the guys that buy tickets, generally, I think a large percent of them, we look through it, probably have a large number of them are in cryptocurrency. And when that went up, they had a large of disposable income they could draw on because they have the asset prices were up, their assets, and so they could buy tickets. But WWE is more of a family company, right?
Yeah,
and so maybe
they bring their kids, their whole families go.
Yeah. So, I mean, WrestleMania might draw a lot of, wealthy people or whatever that are casual fans because it's WrestleMania. But if you have kids and the prices get too high, families are the first ones going to tighten their belt and cut costs because they have to think about the future. They cannot have as much disposable cash by nature because they're saving for college funds and paying for everything for the kids. And you put that together, and I think that spells problems for WWE as we enter a period where the job market might not be as strong. I think stocks, actually, it sounds like the stock market. So if you're in the top 10%, that might be resilient. But for most Americans, with oil prices going up, gas prices, that means going up, inflation coming back, and a very stagnant job market. If we're not seeing increases in joblessness or minor increases, you're not going to see the raises to match inflation. So I think there's going to be a lot of belt cutting. And that'll hit WWE even more than it would UFC. That'd be my guess based on what I know about the WWE fan base. And so that's kind of my working theory is that a lot of them are turned off by the storylines and just they're the type of people that are more responsive to these rising ticket prices.
Two things. The first thing that shocked me was how much of a downturn the ticket sales were between last year's WrestleMania and this one. And it was something like 20,000, 26,000 tickets, which marked somewhere well over 20 or 25% drop. So I firmly embrace your theory on driving the ticket sales up. I mean, the ticket prices up is killing their ticket sales. The other thing you said about the people that go to UFC having more disposable income and being single people. I have a lot of mutuals that go to UFC events. And the thing that I notice is the mutuals that I see going to events, they go to every event they can get their hands on. Like there's a guy named Jason, I can't remember his last name, big tall guy. He goes to like at least 10 events a year. There's a chick that I know named Clara, and she goes to at least 10 events a year. But they plot and they plan and they work their finances around it. But both of them are single. She might have a boyfriend now, but I'm not sure. But yeah, for the longest time, both of them were single. And your theory there is spot on based on my knowledge of lots of people in my mutuals that go to these events, and they go time after time after time.
Yeah, I know a lot of people. Well, casually. My people in my real life bubble don't generally like combat sports unless they're really old and then they like boxing or something like that, or they have some casual interest in MMA, and almost none of them go to MMA events except for some young coworkers I used to have that would go to several events, and they fit that. Maybe some of these people are married, but it just seems the more people I know that are attending, that I've met that attended live MMA events, the less likely they seem to have the kids than those I notice going to pro wrestling. That's all I know. Yeah. And I should say about Hale too, one thing is I don't know what his wrestling
Oh, he's
reporting.
He's been covering wrestling for like 15 years, probably.
Yeah, just because I don't follow, but his MMA coverage was excellent. So I don't know why they don't want him covering the wrestling.
There's a theory. Like I got an idea. They were really pissed off with lots of these outlets. They were providing letter grades for events. And Andreas very notably gave one of their recent big events a D. And then the other thing that I think might have driven the nail in the coffin was he covered some statements and some filings and stuff from Janelle Grant about the Vince McMahon thing. And I think the combination of the two was probably what sealed his fate, unfortunately, because Andreas is a great MMA reporter. He provides very, in my opinion, unbiased reporting, just the facts, Jack. And he's paid to provide those letter grades and to provide commentary. He's been with ESPN for a few years now, and that's what they've got him there for. And it just bugs the shit out of me that ESPN set him up basically to fail in that regard.
It sounds a bit like, like the Zuffa influence, because Zuffa always had the concept, the idea that you're with us or against us. That the MMA media, they want you always promoting, supporting the sport being UFC, not MMA. They always wanted you backing it and never being negative in any way. They always looked at that as unnecessary. You're not helping the growth, which is just kind of absurd. It's not your job, and that's why, Josh Gross and others always had fallings out with them.
Yeah.
So that sounds like maybe the TKO is taking on some of the Zuffa, the vision of Zuffa has of how to deal with the media.
Indeed. Now, the other thing that they did just a few days after the event was they released a huge swathe of talent. I want to say it was between 20 and 30 people that they released, and they ranged from, bottom of the barrel all the way up to almost top tier, but not quite. I would say high mid tier, all the way down, but like a giant chunk of talent was released. Now, they haven't done that since they first merged with UFC to form TKO. So this was, people weren't expecting it. I think there was like an 8-hour notice that some insider dropped and said, hey, I just got word that WWE is getting ready to dump a bunch of talent. And sure as shit, they did within that 8-hour time frame that he estimated that it was going to be 8 hours. And I think it happened at like the 5-hour mark. And then, there was a list, and I mean, I recognized a lot of the names on the list. And for me to recognize when I'm in my peaks and valleys of my fandom, I'm in the bottom of the darkest valley, and I still recognize names on that list. So I guess my question here is, does that signal anything to you?
Well, as someone, again, that doesn't watch pro wrestling, but through osmosis, I picked some things up. And just the nature of WWE, which was formerly WWF back in my day. I mean, there's a couple ideas that come to mind what I possibly think what's going on. One thing it tells me, possibly, because they are obsessed with retaining talent and not... Remember, they were on a whole move like a year ago about supposedly going after AEW. Are they no longer concerned about AEW with this talent? Are they no longer concerned that this talent can go somewhere else and find new life and fans and draw fans there? That's a possibility to me, that they've made the decision that, and again, maybe when you start thinking about the conspiracies people had about Paramount teaming up with Zuffa, because if I'm not mistaken, AEW was on a property that Warner Brothers owns, right?
Yeah.
That's where they're based right now, and they're now merging with Paramount. The conspiracy people, well, they're dead in the water. Maybe that's true. Maybe they're no longer concerned about AEW is why they're releasing this talent. But all I can say is, this reminds me on social media, X, everybody was going nuts about how Hulk Hogan is the greatest wrestler of all time on social media, and they're lambasting the old wrestling guys about how anybody pick someone before Hulk Hogan. And I think a lot of people misunderstand the amount of power that WWF has, and also what they got rid of when there's competition. And this applies to movies and other sports like MMA. Is that WWF, I should say, when they first went national in like 1983, I believe they made like $30 million in revenue. By 91, they made $150 million. So 5x a return. So people are like, they like to look at that and say, look how big they made.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Ooh! Okay, the face!